Investigators are saying very little about the McDonald's E. coli outbreak in Colorado. Looking at a similar investigation from a decade ago, that shows us what'll happen next.
Every time we start an outbreak investigation, we're building on the things we learned from those that came before.
Fact-checking the claims made in yet another attack ad in Colorado's closest congressional race. A high school marching band on a mission to replace instruments held together by tape. The school says they'll meet them halfway. And a group in northern Colorado keeping tons of food out of landfills, filling a market where anyone can shop for free. That's tonight on Next. Colorado's E. coli outbreak tied to McDonald's is growing. Today we learned it is likely centered in Mesa County. Majority of the known cases are there, and the person who died lived on the western slope. This is likely to be a long and intense investigation, and the people running it are saying very little. There are 49 cases reported, 26 of them in Colorado. The next big thing is likely to be a long-term investigation. First, stop the spread of the illness, then confirm the source. Our Mark Salinger got insight from the people who ran a similar investigation here a decade ago.
McDonald's Quarter Pounders are at the center of an E. coli emergency. To know how health officials are racing to prevent others from getting sick, we talked to the people who stopped Colorado's deadliest outbreak.
The first thing we did was we started to interview the people who were sick.
Alicia Cronquist works for the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. She was the Foodborne Disease Program Manager in 2011 when Listeria began spreading through contaminated cantaloupe grown at a farm in southeastern Colorado.
We asked them a lot of questions about all the things we did, and then we tried to figure out what those people had in common.
Cronquist determined everyone who got sick in 2011 ate cantaloupe. The next step is figuring out where it came from.
They were doing what's called a trace back, where they're looking to see if the food that person A, person B, and person C ate, could they have all come from the same source?
That process with the current E. coli outbreak is ongoing now, though McDonald's seems to point to potentially contaminated sliced onions in their burgers. Health labs test to confirm if the produce is indeed contaminated. In 2011, investigators found a farm in Prowers County, Colorado, stopped washing cantaloupe before shipping them around the country.
And when they go around to the various cases, they're able, in essence, to start almost by a process of elimination to zero in pretty quickly.
John Walsh was the U.S. Attorney for the District of Colorado in 2011 during the Listeria outbreak. Now he's running unopposed as the Democratic nominee for Denver District Attorney. He chose to bring federal charges more than a decade ago against the farmers who grew the cantaloupe.
One of the key considerations was, okay, how did this happen, and what did the farm owners understand?
The farmers ended up getting probation after cooperating with Walsh's investigation. That whole process, from the outbreak's discovery to the end of the legal case, took nearly 3 years.
What stands out to me is we tend to take for granted how safe our food is. And yet, when one problem happens, it can hurt so many different people.
I asked Alicia Cronquist what stood out to her about this outbreak compared to the one that she led the investigation into 13 years ago. She said everything that they're doing right now is based on lessons learned from outbreaks like the Listeria outbreak from cantaloupe. The investigation today is benefiting from what was learned more than a decade ago when more than 30 people died and more than 110 got sick.
I can't be the only person who still handles cantaloupe differently as a result of that outbreak years ago. It is in my mind every time I buy it. It's also hard
to believe that that was more than a decade ago.
Right?
2011?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago. When do you think we're going to know which McDonald's we're talking about?
So that's the biggest thing that we still don't know is, hey, if I ate at certain McDonald's, do I need to be worried? The Mesa County Health Department says that they have reached out to specific stores to contact them, but we don't know which those are or how vast that region is. Are there any in Denver? Are there any in Fort Collins, Boulder? We don't know that yet.
All right. As far as we know, centered on Mesa County. Mark Salinger, thank you. A man from Cortez could get up to 5 years in prison for threats against election officials, law enforcement, and judges in Colorado and Arizona. U.S. Attorney's Office says Teek Brockbank pleaded guilty today to one count of transmitting interstate threats. He's been in jail since August when he was arrested for a series of online threats made in 2021 and 2022. Prosecutors say Brockbank called for Colorado's Democratic Secretary of State Jenna Griswold to be hung or put to death, and he threatened to shoot federal investigators if they showed up at his house. Brockbank was not legally allowed to possess guns due to a prior felony, yet investigators say they found several guns at his house when he was arrested. The case was investigated by a federal task force set up in 2021 to specifically address rising threats against election workers and volunteers. Brockbank again faces up to 5 years when he's sentenced early next year. If it feels like you are seeing nonstop political ads featuring Yadira Caraveo and Gabe Evans, that's because you're seeing nonstop political ads featuring those two candidates in Colorado's 8th Congressional District. It's the closest race in the state. A new ad attacking Caraveo has little to do with her work in Congress. Here's politics guy Marshall Zellinger.
Colorado passed our taxpayer Bill of Rights.
Two new political ads attacking Democratic Congresswoman Yadira Caraveo leave out important context on an issue a member of Congress does not deal with. The Taxpayer Bill of Rights, TABOR, limits what Colorado can keep and spend each year. Any changes to TABOR require voter approval. There is not a TABOR limitation in Congress, and Congress can make changes to tax policies without asking voters for approval.
Yadira Caraveo supports eliminating TABOR.
She said it handcuffed politicians and wanted to eliminate it.
Yes, that is what is stated on Caraveo's website when she ran for state representative in 2018. But TABOR is not something Congress has to be concerned about. TABOR is in Colorado's Constitution and caps how much the state budget can increase each year. Anything over that gets refunded to residents. Separately, TABOR also requires voter approval for all tax increases.
Caraveo even backed a bill to try and let the government keep any extra money that should have been refunded to you.
Yes, she did support that bill, but the ad leaves out the very important next step, that voters have the final say, and rejected the idea. In 2019, Caraveo and every other state House Democrat voted in favor of putting Proposition CC on your ballot. Voters were asked to let the state keep money beyond what TABOR allows for schools, roads, and transit, meaning voters would be giving up future TABOR refunds when the state collects too much. Voters said no, with almost 54% against. And even if it had passed, it would not have changed needing voter approval for any tax increase. That part of TABOR was not up for a vote. And again, TABOR has nothing to do with Congress.
Who are these two groups with the same type of ad? One is called Strategic Majority PAC. Go to its website, and it's just a picture of former Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy with a quote. Can't click on anything else. RJC Victory Fund is the other group, Republican Jewish Coalition. Colorado megadonor Larry Mizell is on that group's board of directors. Both have spent almost $700,000 each on these very similar ads, Kyle.
And again, they're talking about something that happens at Colorado State House with the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. There is no Taxpayer Bill of Rights in Congress, of course. They say we're going to hike your taxes and you're going to like it.
Right, no matter who that district sends to Congress, and we've heard about it from the presidential standpoint with former President Trump wanting to do certain tax policy and Vice President Kamala Harris saying she wants to do certain tax policy. That happens without anybody having a say except Congress. But what they're focusing on in the ad is something voters definitely have a say on. So clearly that district, there's been research done that says, hey, if you talk about money, TABOR, you're going to perk people's eyes and ears up, and maybe they'll make a vote based on that issue.
And a moment for the horse race. We have seen races in the past where one side or the other will take their foot off the gas pedal when it comes to spending down the home stretch if they think that that race is out of reach. Clearly not the case here. Both sides still spending heavily on CO8. That is the race to win in Colorado. Marshall, thank you. There is a nonprofit in northern Colorado that keeps tons of food, literally tons of food, from being thrown in landfills and wasted. This week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports the food rescue program Vindicant. They rescue food that is still good to eat, but for some reason it is no longer of use or sellable for grocery stores, bakeries, farms, even truckers with loads of food. So Vindicant's team picks it up, they sort out what is still good, and then they offer that food at no cost to the public at their 3 times a week market. And they also distribute that food for free to other nonprofits that can use it to feed people in our community. They do not go out and buy food. They don't compete with food banks. That's not their thing. They are a last line of defense against food waste and a very effective way to feed our neighbors in northern Colorado. They served 120,000 people last year. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get that link to donate. Your $13 million in microgiving proves how $5 contributions add up. So you know, as always, I'm going to match the first 50 donations of $5 to get us rolling. And almost 3,500 of you now have signed up to simplify your giving with a monthly donation to the Word of Thanks Fund. What that means is that our recent microgiving campaigns have started off with $24,000 in donations each week. You can use that same QR code or text to get there. Excel says it is committed to getting rid of coal power in our state. Replacing it will be easier said than done.
Now every time we show up to a competition, we have to put these bits on and then duct tape them together.
A high school band desperately trying to hold things together. Next. So Excel is on a tight timeline these days to phase out coal power by the end of the decade. Replacing the state's last remaining coal plants with cleaner energy is going to be a tall task, because Excel plans to close a coal plant in Routt County by 2028 and another plant in Pueblo by 2030, but they still haven't settled on what will replace them in terms of power generation. Their latest proposal to state regulators outlines a couple options. The base option would be supplementing solar and wind power with new natural gas plants. Environmentalists are not going to like that option. Excel says another route would be to cut out the natural gas plants and to go all in on these massive battery systems to store power. And nuclear power still on the table, but Excel says bringing a new reactor online would take several years, and that, of course, would invite controversy of its own. Excel has not told regulators how much all of this will cost, as in how much it will cost you, the customer. This is just the start of the process. Approval from state regulators might not come until 2026. Let's bring in meteorologist Kathy Sabin for a look ahead.
We have a dry front that's coming in tomorrow that will create additional wind and elevated fire danger. It may bring temperatures down a couple of degrees, but our warm weather trend with temperatures in the 70s in October will continue. It looks like a beautiful late summer scene up at Grand Lake, and along the Front Range, great visibility tonight. We're watching a few high-thin clouds coming into northern Colorado, and this is the weak front that will cross the state from the northwest tomorrow. It's the system beyond that that will have the weather impact next week, bringing the potential for colder weather, rain showers, and maybe the season's first snowfall to Denver and first freeze. That would be Tuesday into Wednesday. Today, it's all about above average highs in the mid-70s, which are still extremely mild out there right now, and it's 6:14 in the evening. Winds are starting to pick up out of the southeast, but will shift southwest in response to that front that will bring a smidge, just a tiny bit of northern mountain snow tomorrow as our temperature trend continues above average for Denver into the weekend. A beautiful evening out there. We'll look for very little in the way of cloud cover and maybe a brief snow shower in the northern mountains tomorrow. Extended forecast has above average highs Thursday, a cooler, calmer day Friday, 70s for the weekend, almost 80 when the Broncos take the field Sunday afternoon. Showers and cooler weather Tuesday, possibly mixing with snow on Wednesday morning.
Cannot tell you the number of times over the last couple of years that Next viewers have come to us asking for solutions or suggestions to the contract dispute between Altitude TV and Comcast, that business dispute that's kept the Nuggets and Avalanche blacked out for most viewers. Well, now fans have a couple of ways to watch those two championship caliber teams. Kroenke Sports and Entertainment just launched Altitude Plus. It's a paid subscription streaming service where you can watch the Nuggets and Avs. It's the first time for a lot of fans to be able to see the live games that haven't been on national TV since 2019. I'm sorry, that's an embarrassment. 2019. That service launches before the Nuggets season opener tomorrow. And you will be able to watch 40 of those Nuggets and Avs games for free on 9 News and KTVD Channel 20 this season. The first Avs game on our air is tomorrow night. It will be on both 9 News and KTVD. The Avs will be playing the creatively named Utah Hockey Club. Wonder where they're from. Our coverage begins at 6:30 right after Next.
No one ever really appreciates the bass instruments like until they're taken out, you know, so it's pretty cool to be a fundamental part of the sound.
And this bass section is in need of a bit of a boost. Look closely. Yep, students are determined to replace their cobbled together instruments even if their school says they can't afford to do it. So this is probably unfair, but I'm going to say it anyway. You can tell a bit about a marching band member's personality based on their instrument. And the kids who play the sousaphone, they are always interesting cats. Nobody plays the sousaphone by accident, you know? Some Chatfield High School students are keeping their music going with hard work and duct tape. Byron Reed has that.
Learning to play an instrument takes endurance and hard work.
No uniforms today.
Both are skills sophomores Carter Musson and Sam Stevens
I love it.
need to play sousaphone in the Chatfield High School Marching Band.
Usually it's the weight is pretty difficult because it's all on your shoulder
and you're feeling that for long rehearsals, long reps. No one ever really appreciates the bass instruments like until they're taken out, you know? So it's pretty cool to be a fundamental part of the sound.
The biggest problem with mine though is up at the bell.
But when they're having to make homemade repairs to their instruments,
the duct tape, it's probably once a week.
These two came up with an idea.
So we could raise enough money to get some new instruments that function properly and will hopefully last Chatfield for a long time, even after we're gone.
Their mission is to replace 4 old sousaphones.
What are we at? It looks like 3,200 probably.
With used instruments for half the price.
So they'd cost about $3,400 for a basically new instrument that originally costs a little over $8,000.
It's a tune that even caught the ear of their administration.
Through them advocating for themselves and saying we're going to go out into the real world to solve that problem, those are all things that we would want for any one of our students, and I'm proud of them for taking that action.
John Thanos is the principal of the high school that's doing their part too.
We're excited that they took those steps themselves, and are also more than willing to match any donations that they've made and support them in any way beyond those matches.
The plan is to get newer horns for the next generation of marchers to help Carter and Sam achieve a long-term goal.
It's not just for us, like it's really important that students in the future who are looking at Chatfield see they have good equipment, they're good, and they want to be a part of the band.
For Next,
we're over the moon about it. It's so helpful to feel like your school can back you.
I'm Byron Reed.
Carter and Sam are hoping to raise about $17,000 for those sousaphones and other instruments that need to be replaced. And as they said, it's not just for them, it's for all the kids who will come along and play them after them. If you'd like to help, we have a link in Byron's story on 9news.com. Marilyn played the piano, which you cannot march with, played the trombone, which you can march with carefully so you don't take somebody out. Feedback next. This week's Word of Thanks nonprofit is not a food bank, but they help to keep people fed. Unlike food banks, Vindicate doesn't buy its food, it rescues unwanted or unusable food from grocery stores, farms, and bakeries, so it doesn't go into landfills. What is good to eat gets sorted out and goes into the nonprofit's free market up in Fort Collins, where anybody can shop 3 days a week. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to join me and a bunch of other Coloradans in donating to Vindicate so they can continue their food rescue work in northern Colorado. That link will take you to a place where you can give to just this week's cause or sign up to make a monthly donation to support each Word of Thanks nonprofit. Alex writes on Twitter, I am a proud Chatfield alum and played sousaphone from 2002 to 2005. Alex says, get those kids some new instruments. P.S. There's a chance I played one of those broken down horns. 20 years ago. Alan on Thread says, regarding cantaloupes, proper way to handle them is to immediately throw this garbage fruit in the trash. You're protected from E. coli and their terrible, awful, no good taste. There will be no cantaloupe slander on this program. They're delicious.